Hey everyone, this is Aria, and I'm back with my third tutorial. I had a few people ask me how I made this animation, so I'm going to show you how I modeled the dominoes, as well as how I set up the rigid body simulation. Just some tips and tricks on how to make sure it's super stable. And if you stay till the end, I'll show you how I did some of the camera work as well. Alright, so here we go. Okay, so open up a new scene and we can select this light and hit delete, and then we're going to use the default cube to create our domino shape. So hit S to scale, and then we're going to hit Z to lock it to that axis, and then type in 1.7 and hit enter. Next we'll hit SY and type 0.15, then SX and 0.8. Great, so now we've got the base shape for our domino. What we can do is hit N on our keyboard, and you'll see that obviously our scale values are not the same anymore. So what we need to do is make sure we select the domino here, hold Control and hit A, and then we're going to reset all of our transforms. And that's just going to help us later on with our simulation. So now hit G, Z, and type 1.7 to bring it up to the ground level. And then we can hit the decimal key on our keyboard to focus in on the domino. So the next thing we need to do is add our geometry that we're going to use to cut through the domino here. So hit Shift A, and we're going to add a cube, and then we can hit SZ and then type 0.04 to scale on the Z axis, then SX 0.6 and SY 0.1. Now we can hit GZ and type 1.7 to bring it up into the center, then GY and minus 0.2 to bring it forward. And now you can see that our second cube is intersecting with the domino here. So next we're going to hit Shift A, and we're going to add in a UV sphere. Then we're going to scale this by 0.15. Then we're going to hit SY and type 0.5 to scale it on the Y. Then hit GY minus 0.15 to bring it forward. And now you can see that it's intersecting in the center. So we'll hit GX and hit minus 0.4 to bring it over. Then GZ and type 3 to bring it into place. So now we need to create all of the other dots here. So what we'll do instead of recreating that is we'll make sure we're on the modifiers tab here. Click this menu and we're going to click array, and then we're going to type in 1.33 on the X and set the count to 3. Great, so now we can hit apply on that. So we'll click this again and add a second array, and we'll change the count to 3 again. We're going to type 0 for the X and go all the way to the Z and type in 1.33 as well. Let's change this to minus, so that's going in the proper direction. And now we can hit apply. So finally we're going to add one more array, and this time we're not going to apply it. We're just going to use this as a guide. We're going to leave the count to 2, change the X to 0, and finally we'll change the Z to minus 1.6 and hit enter. Great. Okay, so the next thing we want to do before we start doing our cutouts is we're going to select our domino here. We're going to hit tab and make sure everything is selected. If you've got nothing selected, hit A to select all the vertices here. And then we're going to hold Control and hit B. And then if we drag our mouse out, you'll see that we've got a bevel, and we can scroll up and down on our middle mouse button to create more or less cuts. And I think for our purposes, 2 or 3 should be fine, so I'm just going to click there. And the last thing we need to do is add some loop cuts in between all of these spheres here. So we're going to hold Control R, and then we can just click and drag. And make sure you just put these ones kind of close. It'll just help out. These can just go in between, that's fine. Okay, so now we want to organize things a bit. So we're going to click this button here twice to add 2 new collections. And then we're also going to click this little icon here and make sure that these 2 toggles are set to on. Then we're just going to name these collections. The first one, we're going to name it Dots. And the second one, we can name it Base Domino. And then we're just going to rename these here. This was our dots here. And this is our center cut. And this here is our base domino. Okay, so make sure that the base domino is selected, and then we're going to hit Shift D and hit Escape immediately to leave it in place. And then we're going to just click and drag this into base domino here, and then what we can do is just click and drag across here to shut that off. And we don't need this. This is just in case we have to go back or we screw something up. We have this for later on. That's an optional step for you guys. And then we're going to select base domino again and bring our mouse out here, hit Shift D, Escape one more time. And the reason for this is if you just want to make more than one group of numbers, then you can just use this as an extra. Okay, so what we can do next is just click on the dots here, and then we're going to just delete this array. We don't need it any longer. We just need the top half. And what we want to do is we want to separate these into their own mesh. You can see that they're all attached. So click on any one of them, and what we can do is hit Tab to go into edit mode. And then you can either hit P on your keyboard or right click and go to separate by loose parts. Now you can see if we tab back into object mode, we've got all of these separated over here. So we can click on the top one here, shift click on dot 8, and then we can drag them into our dots collection here. And now we can hit this arrow to close that down. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 6 more collections, and we're just going to name these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we're going to drag this down a bit to give ourselves some room, and we can click here to open the dots collection back up. We can click and just drag this down here so it's out of our way. And now what we want to do is create a collection for each number. So what we'll do here is we can just click on our center dot here, and we're going to hit Shift D and hit Escape, and you'll see it created a new one here. And we can just click and drag this into here, and now you'll notice that if we turn this group off, we've just got our single dot here. So let's turn those back on. And then we just want to do that for all the other numbers. So let's do 2. So we're going to select this one and this one here, hit Shift D, hit Escape right away, and then we're just going to drag and drop these into the number 2 here. Then we're going to do 3. So 1, 2, 3, Shift D, Escape, and we'll drag these into the number 3. And then just scroll down so we can see our collections here. We're going to do number 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, Shift D, Escape, and then we're going to drag and drop these into number 4. Let's just close these down just so we can see for now. And for number 5, we'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Shift D, Escape, and then we'll drag these to number 5 here. And finally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Shift D, Escape, and we'll drag these down to number 6. Now what we can do is close the dots group down. We're just going to hide these because we don't need them anymore. And then what we can do is just close all these down for a second here. And we want to make these for the bottom as well. So we're just going to right click and duplicate collection. And we'll do that for all of these here. So 3, duplicate, right click, duplicate. And then what we can do is we can open up all of these now. And then what we want to do is sort of create one mesh for each. So obviously these 2 are fine here. But for the rest of these, what we're going to do is we're going to click and shift click and bring our mouse into the 3D window here. And then we're going to hold Control and hit J. And now you can see that we've got one mesh instead of 2. And we want to do that for all of the groups here. So hold Control and hit J. Great, so now what we want to do is we're going to hold Control and select every second one here. So just like that, there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what we want to do is hover into this window here. We're going to type in GZ and minus 1.7 to bring it down. And now what we can do is if we just scroll up here, we're just going to click and drag and close all of these down here. Okay, so now we can turn all of these off in the render and in the viewport here. So just click those and click and drag all the way up and down. This one as well. And then click the domino, and what we want to do is make sure we're in the modifiers tab here, and we're going to add 3 boolean modifiers. So 1, 2, and 3. And then what we can do is click this little eyedropper here, and we're going to click our object, our secondary cube here. And you'll notice that it's doing something kind of funny here. And the reason is because we've got this other one underneath. So just click and drag across there, and you'll see now that it doesn't have those artifacts anymore. So now you'll see that if we click this center cut cube here and hit H, that we've got our boolean cutout. So click the domino again, and the next thing you want to do is just pick the numbers that you want to use. So in our case, we'll just use 3 and 5 here. So what we can do now is once we unhide those, we can click the eyedropper and make sure we click this one here and this one here. And you'll notice there's a bit of artifact going on. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but if you just hit G and then Y and then move the domino sort of back and forth, it'll fix that. It seems like a glitch. I'm not really sure why exactly it's doing that, but that will fix it if you just move it back and forth for whatever reason. So make sure we've got this selected, and we're going to apply all 3 of these here. And then you'll notice now that if we hit G and then X, we can move this over and we've got our domino. So what we can do is right click and shade smooth, and you'll notice that it kind of ruined everything here. So to fix that, what we can do right here is go to the object data properties, and we're going to enable auto smooth and just leave that to 30. We can just name this one Domino 3-5 and hit enter. And if you wanted to make another domino, you just would make another copy of this here, and you can do that same process again. But for this tutorial, we're just going to do the one. So I'm going to hide this base domino again, and I'm going to click these as well and hit H to hide them. And now you can see that we've got our domino ready. So the next thing we want to do is just quickly put a material onto this. So we're going to click this here, and let's just go into the look dev mode by clicking up here, and then go to the materials tab here, click new, and then we're going to change the base color to something dark or black, and just bring the roughness down a little bit here, or a lot, whatever you want. And that's pretty much it. So if you want to make the dots white like I did, what you can do is go into edit mode and by hitting tab, and then you want to make sure you're on face select mode. Either click here or hit 3 on your keyboard. And let's also turn on X-ray mode, and then we just want to click and drag so that we've got all of these faces here. Now turn X-ray mode off, and what we can do is just flip around to the back, hit the C key, and then hold shift, and we can just drag across all of these here just to unselect them. Like that, and then we'll hit escape, and then we'll come back to the front here, and we can do the same thing on the front, so hit C, and then you can just get rid of all of these ones here. Try not to get the ones, of course, that we want to keep. You can see I did that there, so hit escape, just hold shift. It might be easier to get these ones by just shift and click. There we go. And then I'm just going to get these ones down here. Okay, shift and drag, and then just click these ones like that. Okay, awesome. So once you've got all those, what you can do is go and make sure you're into the materials tab, go here, and we're going to hit this little plus button to add a new material. First thing you want to do is hit assign so you don't forget, and then if you hit new, you'll see that automatically it's already changed the color, so we can bring the roughness down again a little bit. Then just hit tab, and you can see now that we've got our completed domino. Great, so the next thing we want to do is create our simulation, but we just need to create some other geometries first. So just hit G and X to bring this into the center. And what we're going to do is hit Shift A to add in a new cube. We'll hit S, Z, and scale this to 0.1. Next, we'll hit G, Z, and type in 0.1 minus or minus 0.1 just to bring it down. And then we can scale this by hitting S, Y, and typing in 25. Then we'll hit G, Y, and drag our mouse till it's over lined up here, and just click. Great, so now we can add a quick material by hitting the plus here, and we're just going to change this to metallic. And we can change the color here to something a little blue. And bring the roughness down just a little bit here. Awesome. So now we're going to go into the physics tab here, and we're going to create our rigid body simulation. So click rigid body here, and we're going to change this to passive. And we want to change this to box instead of convex hull. If we leave it here like this, I'll show you what happens. Click the domino and click rigid body, and we'll make it active and leave it as well. And then you'll see now that if we hit play, that it kind of wobbles a bit, and it will probably eventually fall over if we just leave it like that. So to stop that from happening, what we want to do is just click here and change this to box, and then we're going to click this as well and change this to box also. And now you'll notice that if we go back to frame 1 and hit play, it's a lot more solid. So the next thing we need to do is create more dominoes. So what we want to do is make sure we've got our domino selected. We can hit Shift D and then hit Y and type in 2. Then if you click, you'll see it goes away. And the reason it's doing that is because we're not at frame 1 in our simulation. So let's just go back here, and you'll see now that it snaps back into place, and we should be good to go. So what we can do is just hit Shift R continuously. And so we've got dominoes that go all the way down. So now that we've got all of our physics copied across like that, what we can do is create something to initiate our simulation. So let's just hit Shift A, and we're going to add in a new cube, and we can scale that on the Z by 0.1 again. And we're just going to bring it over here, bring it up. And then we can rotate this on the X axis like this. And now you'll notice if we want to scale this, it's not going to scale properly. So what we can do is click here and go to local. And now if we hit SY, you'll see that the green line is running along the local Y axis. And we can just drag this out and scale it to here. And make sure to change this back to global. Now we're going to click rigidbody, set this to passive as well. We can leave this or change it to box. It doesn't really matter for this case here, but we'll just make it box just to get a better simulation. So now we can hit Shift A and we're going to add in a UV sphere. And then we're just going to bring it up and over. And then we can right click Shade Smooth. We'll add a quick material to this. Here, new, and we'll bring the roughness down, the transmission all the way up, and we just want to click this as well, and we'll just click this little down arrow and click material 3. Now we just want to click the sphere here. We can go back into our physics properties, click rigid body, and that's all we need to do. Now if we hit play, you'll see that our simulation is working and it's moving a little bit slow. So what you can do is if you click this here, the scene properties, you can click this little down arrow here and you can set the speed to something like 2.5 or 3 and then go back to frame 1. And now you can see if we play it, it moves a lot better. And the reason for that is these are, the scale of these are actually quite large. So they're falling with proper physics, but they're not the proper size of dominoes. So we just use the speed to counteract that. Instead of scaling it down, if we were to do that, Blender wouldn't be able to calculate it properly. So this is what we're doing for this scene here. So if you want to set up some lighting here, what we can do is just go into our render tab here. We're going to click the world tab, and instead of having a color, we can click environment texture. We're going to click open and select our HDRI here. The one that I used is from hdrihaven.com and it's called Royal Esplanade. So you can just search that. So then I can just click and open, and now you can see that we've got some better lighting here. So what we can do is click the render tab here, make sure we go down, and we can just unclick transparent, and then we can sort of use this as a background. And what you want to do is just sort of set up your angle that you want to view here, and we can go to the shading tab, click world. Sorry, we're just going to need to set this up here. Turn the render view on, go to edit and preferences here. We can go to add-ons, and if you type in node here, you'll see that there's an add-on called Node Wrangler. Just make sure that's checked on. And then you can click here and hit Control T, and it will bring up this mapping node. And what you can do is you can just spin this around on the Z axis until you've got something a little bit more straight on. And then if we go back to layout and we'll just go to frame 1, you'll see all the other dominoes will show up as well. The last thing I want to do is a few people asked me how I did my camera work, so I'm just going to show you quickly. So what we'll do is we'll just go back to the viewport shading here and just turn our guides back on. And we're just going to scale the ground plane here. So hit SY and then we'll type in 5. And then we'll hit GY and we're going to just bring it over here like this. And then what we can do is just click and drag to select all of our dominoes here. And you'll see down here it says 24. So if we hit Shift D and then hit Y and type in 48, it will bring them over and line it up perfectly here. And then all we need to do now is hit Shift R 3 or 4 times to bring it all the way down to the end. And then what we can do is click on our sphere here, hit the decimal key to focus in on this area here. And what we want to do is get our camera set up to something that we like, and make sure we've got a camera in our scene. If you don't, hit Shift A to add one. But if you do, what you want to do is hold Control Alt and then hit the 0 on the numpad, and it will frame the camera to the view. And then what we can do is just click here and just change the focal length to something like 35. And you'll notice that we've got all these dominoes here. So if you wanted, you could create a another collection just to put those all into. I'm not going to do it because we don't need to for this. Now what we can do is make sure we've got the camera selected, make sure we're on frame 1, and then we're going to hit I, and then we're going to keyframe the location, rotation, and scale, so click here. And then what I like to do is I like to do the camera animation in larger chunks, so let's do something like 400 frames here. And then what we can do is we can just let this play. First thing, let's go to the this tab here, and make sure we bake our simulation just so we've got more memory to work with. Set this to 400 as well. Click bake, it should bake super quickly. And now if we hit play, let's just let it go for about 100 frames or so. And then when we get to a frame that we like, what we can do is if you hit F3 and type in walk, you'll see that there's an option here that says View Navigation Walk Fly. Click that, and what we can do with this is sort of control it like a video game. So we're using our mouse to orbit like this, and we can use the up arrow and down arrow to move back and forth, left and right. And if it's going slow, you can scroll up on the middle mouse key to speed up the tracking. And we're just going to get something that we like here, and we're going to click, and then we can hit I and keyframe again on all three of those there. We'll hit play, let it go a little bit further, say to about 200, hit F3 again, hit enter, and we can push forward and we can find a good place. By the way, if you want to go up or down, you can hit Q to go down and E to go up. If it's jumping by too much, just remember to scroll down on the middle mouse button and it'll do less increments. Then you can find something that you like here, and then we'll hit I and keyframe that, hit play. Let it go to 300, hit F3 again, enter, and then we can just move forward here. Scroll up to move quicker. And we'll do something like this. And then we can keyframe that as well. And now if you go back to frame 1, you'll see here that we've got the start of our camera animation. And the way I make it really smooth is if you just go up here, you'll see a little icon here. We're just going to click and drag to add a secondary window here. Click this and go to the graph editor and hit normalize. And now what we can do is we can select all of our keys here, or you can hit A. And so we're going to right click and change the interpolation mode to Bezier. And now we can close this down. We can right click here, join and close. And now if we hit play, you'll see that it's a lot smoother. And then what you want to do is just find any areas where it's not framed properly, like say frame 40 here, it's a little off. I want it to focus more here. So what we can do is go to frame 40, hit F3, hit enter, and then we can frame this up a little bit better to something like that. Hit I and keyframe. And so now if we hit play, you can see it's working a little bit better here and it's nice and smooth. So that's pretty much it. We can turn this on here just to see it a little better, turn our guides off. And you can see we've got basically our final animation. The only differences that I did is I added a staircase at the end here, added a second layer, and that's about it. And you can just use all the same processes that we use to set that up. Okay, so that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I enjoyed making it. Please like and subscribe to my channel so I can create more of this stuff in the future. And we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.